everyone, and welcome to episode 498 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the small crew here this week. Richard couldn't be here. He's off in China at the moment, but we have with us Crim. How's it going this morning, Crim?
Morning. Yeah, my dad's off to China, so he's out there hanging out and doing things. But I'll gladly hold it down for him and channel my most, inner magic boomer energy I can.
Channel your inner Richard for this podcast. Yes.
Yeah, my inner Richard.
So today we have some interesting topics. So we got Mark Rosewater's State of Design article from the past year. Going to talk about that a little bit. We have a BNR update coming next Monday. So we wanted to get into what we think might change a week from today. We got some spoilers from Foundation, some Arena Precon news, and then some fish mail. So that's an overview of the cast for today. Before we jump into it, though, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip them with Card Conduit. You can use their curated service where you send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use this sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. Either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic. And let's start with, let's start with the big topic, which for me is the upcoming BNR update. We're going to get into the State of Design in a minute, but BNR update's coming. We've been kind of counting down the days for the past month or so, ever since Watsy did a stream and said pretty much expect changes at the end of the month on August 26th. So that's coming up a week from today. And I'm curious, Grim, what you're expecting with this BNR. So let's just go kind of through the formats. Let's work back from standard, back through the older formats. First off, standard. Do we need to change anything in standard, you think, with this BNR?
100% no. I think everything in standard right now is looking great. So let's just let it ride out and not do anything yet.
So I agree with you. I think standard's in a good spot. There's always going to be things that are decks that have really good draws or whatever, but that's part of standard. I'm curious though, because one card that came up in this past week that people suddenly realized is really strong is Innkeeper's Talent. It's like Magic Twitter realized a week after everyone on YouTube realized that it was really busted. So people are realizing that you could use Innkeeper's Talent to instantly ultimate Planeswalkers. And Golgari with Innkeeper's Talent is the most played deck in standard right now. I even saw some people saying, I think this is going to have to be banned. It's too strong. Not that it needs to be banned next week, but do you actually think Innkeeper's Talent is a card that in its life in standard could actually require a banning?
I don't know. I don't think so personally. I felt like it was strong. Don't get me wrong. But every time I've played against it on the ladder, it's never really been that big a deal. Mostly just because I am waiting for, I essentially have to account for it. So I do think it's powerful. I do think it's something that you have to respect in the meta. But just, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem that offensive to me. What's bad about it? Because you are relying on somebody going turn 2, play Innkeeper's Talent, turn 4, right? Level it up because you need 4 mana. And then turn 5, they'll drop Vraska with the Phyrexian reduction. But yeah. I think one thing that people don't know about that Phyrexian reduction is that it is going to be doubling. It'll double what it enters with, and then it loses 2 counters. Yeah. So I think that
technically you get to choose which way to apply it, right? And you always want to apply it the way that gives you the most counters. But yeah, that is a weird. I missed that at first when I started playing the deck. Actually, I thought I had to get to 6 mana to cast Vraska, but no, you can actually do it for 5 mana. It is good, but it is interactable, right? There's many windows. You have to play it on turn 2. You have to pay a mana to level it up to level 2, then 4 mana to get to level 3. So there's a lot of time in space for you to actually just answer the talent if you need to. So I think it's really good, and I think it's one of the strongest things you can do in standard. But at this point, it's hard for me to see it as like a bannable card. It seems like a good card, but it's, I don't know, I haven't seen it dominating the ladder or anything. Like, I play against it on occasion, but I get wrecked by mono red or that flinging your mono red deck way more than I lose to Innkeeper's talent.
The Rakdos deck is I find way more consistent.
Yes.
Right?
Oh.
What's funny here is, like, because of that, I've got a little bit of a tech in the sideboard, which is whatever the 3-mana angel from
Metropolis
Aftermath?
Region or something. Yeah, I played against someone that sideboard that didn't against me. I'm like, why do they have that in their sideboard? But is it really good against the red decks?
I mean, the red decks, because, like, if they don't have hard removal, and why would they against my blue-white or Esper control deck, right? Like, so if they keep those in, it would only be for Metropolis thingy. And if they burn it to get rid of it, then I've already gained a bunch of life, which means I'm allowed to handle, you know, the damage of the fling.
And it gives you hexproof, right? So until they get off the battlefield, they can't just like throw their mouse at your face and combo kill you. That actually seems like sweet tech. That, like, it's probably fine even against normal mono red too. Just like bring it in to like eat a big attack and gain some life off of it, or like be a good blocker.
It's been solid in that, like, against that and aggro, like you had mentioned. That's when I bring it in. That's the other matchups I bring it in. And because it has flying, they don't get to be cute with Slick Shot and try to just swing in, because it can block Slick Shot easily.
Are you playing like Caretaker's Talent control? Are you playing a more traditional counterspelly draw go control deck? Like, I think the Caretaker's Talent build is the one I've seen the most of control decks, like, in the last week or so.
I have played both. I'm trying the one without Caretaker's Talent right now. Caretaker's Talent has been very good. I've thoroughly liked Caretaker's Talent so far. Right now I'm trying all of it without Caretaker's Talent, without the Simulacrum synthesizers.
Yep.
I am just playing like Jace and Elspeth, Teferi, and kind of going with the old school, just like Planeswalkers win.
That's sweet. Yeah, I've been thinking about Jace lately because that like 4 or 5 color control deck has gotten a little bit more popular. And when I play against that deck, I'm just like, man, if I ever had Jace, I would kill this deck. So like just mill him out so easily.
Yeah.
So I think like Jace, probably not great against like the aggro decks, but against the like mid-ranging control decks, it's such a good finisher.
I mean, it's still decent against the, like, as long as it's maybe not mono red, but if it's like those fling decks, giving something -3, -0 is pretty huge.
I guess that's true. Like, I guess against mice or decks like that, you are kind of shutting down a threat each turn. Worst case, you can cycle it. So I guess it's even not that bad against aggro. It's not as good as it is against like the control decks where it's just like a game-ending bomb, but still fine.
Yeah.
So okay,
the -3 is solid because you're now forcing the aggro deck to add an additional card to the board, thus playing more into your board wipe, because they're trying to, you know, play 1, maybe 2 things tops.
Yeah.
Keep swinging until you eventually answer both. But this forces them now to either apply a third threat, use a pump spell, do something, juice them of more cards, and that just plays into usually your temporary lockdowns and things like that.
Kind of like Braided Net does for the artifacty control builds, where if you can just tap down a creature every turn, it kind of forces your opponent to add to their board, and then you Sunfall them or whatever, unstable glyph them and just get them. All right, so I think we're in agreement. Nothing needs to change in Standard right now. Standard is actually super fun, in a really good spot. Let's go back to Pioneer. So Pioneer, if you look at the meta right now, and this is Explorer, of course, on Magic Arena, it's a very interesting spot. So there's really 3 decks, I think, that are in the conversation for this BNR. So number 1, you got Amalia combo, which Amalia combo has just proven to be really miserable, in part because it can win really quickly on turn 3, and in part because we've seen the like draw the game loops that are really awkward when it comes to paper play, where like you have these 6 game matches or whatever, because some games just end in a draw when you make Amalia indestructible, and it's really weird. So I think Amalia is one of the decks that's in the conversation. Rakdos Vampires is like 35% of the meta, the like Vein Ripper off of Sorin play. So I think that's in the conversation just because it's so heavily played. And again, another like, I guess it's not a turn 3 kill deck really, but it does do its big thing on turn 3, right? That's the put the Vein Ripper into play. Can you deal with it turn? And then the third deck is It Phoenix, which Is It Phoenix? I don't think it's as bad as either of the other two decks right now, but a lot of people have been arguing that if you do something about the first two decks, Is It Phoenix is just going to be the tier 0 deck because of Treasure Cruise and the Phoenix plan. So I'm curious, Crim, what do you think about Pioneer? Do we need changes? If so, what would you do? And what do you think Wizards is going to do next week with Pioneer?
I mean, first off, I don't think Wizards is going to do anything to Pioneer just because they don't pay attention to it for some odd reason. Like, they just don't do anything to it. And they should have done it a long time ago. Do a lot of bannings. And I will still, I'll still advocate for Nykthos getting the axe. And none of that, those three decks even have Nykthos, but I think Nykthos, Lotus Field, those decks are all a problem. Amalia, yeah, I could see where the problem is with Amalia. I guess it does combo pretty easily, and it can kind of Coco into it as well. So it does have some kind of explosive turns. So I think something might need to go from that, just because that's all you're seeing in Pioneer tournaments. What was the other deck after that?
Rakdos Vampires is the other big one. Like, what do we do about? We've been talking about Rakdos and Pioneer for like years now, even before the Vampire package was a thing. We've always been like, how do you, if you do want to ban something from Rakdos, what do you even do to ban it? Maybe it's easier now that you have the Sorin Vein Ripper plan if you do need to ban something.
Does that need a banning? Like, it's powerful. It's obviously very powerful, but does that need a banning? I'm not sure that it does. Right? I don't think so. Rakdos has already been good, and it's been good for so long that I guess maybe I've been conditioned to like believe that it's fine because I've seen it for so long, and Rakdos has been so dominant in Pioneer because it has such a critical mass of good cards. But as of right now, I don't know if that combo needs to go. It doesn't feel that bad to me, in my opinion. The other, what was that last one? Oh, yeah.
Phoenix was the last one.
Phoenix has been here. Phoenix has been here since pretty much Pioneer, right? It's had Treasure Cruise. It's had Dig Through Time. I don't know. I think it's it's obviously a very good deck. It's a very solid, consistent deck. But it also doesn't feel like it needs a banning. Like, I don't think that just because it's strong, something needs to go. It really comes down to how the tournament scene shakes up, and there has to be numbers to back that up, because if Phoenix wins like 4 tournaments in a row, then that's probably a sign. I've seen a lot of Amalia. Yeah. A lot of Amalia winning all over the place, so I think that's probably something now you have to probably like sit down and look at. The others, I think they're fine.
So I will say, from my perspective, I think Amalia very likely to get banned, not just because of its power level, but because of the draw the game thing. I think Wizards really doesn't like that like decks that mess with how tournaments are run. I remember this when in Modern, when Eggs was really good, or Sensei's Divining Top in various formats, where cards end up getting banned because Wizards is like, this is just making tournaments take too long. Like, it's dragging on rounds. We're not able to finish our tournaments. And I think Amalia kind of has that same issue because of the draw the game loop. So I expect that Amalia will get targeted. I would argue that Rakdos just being like 35+% of the meta, for me, that's enough to target it with a banning. I personally would just ban Sorin, and I think Rakdos would still be good, right? Like, it would go back to where it was before they started playing Vein Ripper Sorin combo, and it was still a tier 1 deck back before they had those pieces, just playing all the good Rakdos cards. So I think Rakdos would still be fine, but it would lose like the turn 3 combo kill element. Is It Phoenix is what I'm less sure on. I get what people are saying, that like there's a risk if these other two decks get hit by bannings, Is It Phoenix becomes too good. I would personally rather just see Wizards be more active in Pioneer. I know a year ago now, almost a year ago, when they banned, oh no, last December. I'm trying to remember what they banned last December. But regardless, part of that announcement, they said, we're going to more actively manage Pioneer. It's when they banned Karn. It was when they banned Karn out of Pioneer. And they said, we haven't, been on top of the format very much. We're going to be more active. We're going to, keep track of this format more. I would rather see them like deal with Amalia and maybe Sorin, and then keep an eye on Phoenix, see what happens in this new meta. And if you need to ban something, ban it like next announcement, not a year or two from now. Because I think that's the biggest issue with Pioneer, right? Is they just like wait so long to make changes. And that's been like the story of the format, really. Like we've talked about this back to like inverter combo days and stuff, where they just let the Heliod combo and inverter combo stay at the top of the meta for like 18 months or something. And it almost killed Pioneer at that point because people just got so tired of playing against it. So overall, like, in some sense, I don't even care what they do. I just want them to do something. I want them to show that they're actually going to like be more active in managing Pioneer, whether they make the changes I really want or not. Just show us that you actually care about Pioneer.
I mean, I also think that, just to, I guess, to reiterate on some points, I think that they definitely haven't. I don't want to say that this is directly the downfall in popularity of Pioneer, but I do think it is a big part of it, right? Like you had mentioned, to really elaborate on that, I think that is why Pioneer was like this really beloved format at the beginning, and everyone was super high on it. But then, it just kind of started to wane in popularity, and I think it just really had to do with how long it took for them to act on the format. And I think at this point now, I think the damage has been done. I'm hoping they can still salvage Pioneer.
It makes me sad because when I think about what Pioneer is now and like the size of the card pool, it's almost exactly where Modern was when Modern was the best format and my favorite format. Like if you look at it right now, going back to when Pioneer started, it's like 10, 11 years worth of cards or something. That's what Modern was when it first launched, going back to 2003, at like 10 years worth of cards. So it seems like Pioneer should be absolutely booming. Like it seems like it's in that sweet spot where eternal formats are at their best, or non-rotating formats, but it just hasn't gotten there. I would also add, I think part of it was the pandemic too, ended up like hurting it and losing paper play right when it was like starting to like gain in popularity. So I think it was a format that got hurt the worst by that, but Wizards like management of it also I think plays a big role. But let's move on to Modern. So Modern, the big conversation, Nadu, I don't know how much there is to say about that. They're just going to ban Nadu, right, Crim? Is there any chance next Monday we get like the Shuko ban or something silly like that? They gotta just kill the bird, right?
Yeah, I don't see it being a Shuko ban. Shuko ban. I don't think Shuko was a problem until Nadu, right?
No.
If they're trying to do get all the things around the actual problem, then sure. But Nadu is the biggest, I think, the most offensive card from Modern Horizons 3. But I mean, we all kind of knew that, so I guess it's nice, it got to have its time in the sun for a little bit. But I think, all right, the meme is done, the joke's over, we're good. Let's go ahead and ban this now. It's even had enough set releases since its release to where people now can just can ride off into the sunset.
Yeah. We had Nadu Summer. Now we're done with that. We can forget it ever happened. I think hopefully this is where they learn from the Hogak bannings, and where they tried to ban Bridge from Below instead of Hogak at first, and then it was everyone's mad, and then they still had to ban Hogak. So hopefully this is where they learn from that, and I think they will just ban Nadu. I would be very surprised if they try to ban Shuko or something. If they do, oh boy, next Monday will be a wild day because people will be very upset. What about beyond Nadu? That's the other question. So Modern is in just like such a wild place, and because Nadu has been so dominant and it's turned people off to even like playing the format over the last couple of months, it's hard to know what, if anything else, needs to change. We saw like Energy rebalanced on Arena, and we've seen Energy's win rates. If you look at people who just track like decks that get top 8s in tournaments, top 32s in tournaments, the win rate for Energy decks, Mardu or Boros, is actually comparable to Nadu, like winning 59, 61% of the time. So the Energy decks are really good. The One Ring's in almost 50% of decks now. Do you think we'll see anything beyond Nadu? Or is this one of those, like, we ban Nadu and then we'll reevaluate next update?
I think it's going to be ban the bird and then let everything else play out, because even the next best thing, if it were like Boros energy, because like before, without Nadu taking over, let's just assume then we're looking at Boros energy, Jeskai control, which is essentially the Boros energy package with, the Jeskai control elements. And I mean, my personal favorite, I know I may meme on Modern, but the one deck to make me like kind of forget about my memery on Modern is Blue Black Frog. That deck is pretty damn cool. Then you'd have like Titan and all these other things, right? So otherwise, I mean, it is as expected. Modern Horizons 3 block constructed, right?
Yep.
There's no, let's be realistic. You're not going to see a banning on energy, right? As a whole, I don't think you're going to see that. They can ban a few key pieces, whatever that new bolt is, or the new, whatever, 1 mana burn spell is. But that seems unlikely, right? So I don't think any of these decks are offensive enough to where they need a banning even, because they're all essentially mid-range and fair decks that are, grinding you out. So if that's the worst place that Modern can be, I think that's fine. Whereas Nadu breaks the gameplay pattern, kind of ruins tournaments, and just overall is like the worst thing to watch. There's just a lot of things that Nadu is doing that's offensive. The rest of the decks seem fine to me. So I don't know, even like what you have Frog, you have Blue Black Murktide, you have so many other things, and the format looked relatively cool.
So I would say, yeah, it's really tough just because Nadu kind of casts its shadow over the rest of the format. Personally, I'm still only got to ban the One Ring train. Like, the meta percentage just keeps ticking up, and it's like, it's not going away. We'll talk about it a little bit later when we talk about the State of Design article, because it does come up in there. But I am firmly in the just like ban the One Ring. Like, I think it's inevitable at some point, so you might as well do it now. The energy stuff is tougher. I think that it's very likely that something from energy will need to be banned eventually. I also think it's unlikely that they ban something from energy now. And I think it's also very tricky to ban, because it's not like there's an overpowered card, really. Even what's the best energy card? Galvanic Discharge, Skydosols, like Amped Raptor. Like, none of those are overpowered cards. It's kind of that when you put them all together, it's actually kind of funny because it's almost like Modern is going through what Standard went through when Kaladesh came out, and you have this uninteractable resource system, which I guess it's a little more interactable now because of Sun Cleanser, which is seeing a lot of Modern play, but this uninteractable resource system that just, when you put all the cards together, that's how we ended up with a Tune with Ether being banned in Standard, one of the silliest bannings. Like, I think one of the least powerful cards to ever be banned is a Tune with Ether, but that was actually bannable just because of the synergy of energy together. So I don't think they're going to do anything about energy now, but I do think when you just look at the metagame and you see like Boros energy number 2 at 10%, Jeskai energy control number 3 at 8.2%, Mardu energy, which is Boros energy splashing black for like Bowmasters or whatever, or Cthulhian Nightmare, 7.3%. It's very likely the energy is the best archetype once Nadu is banned. So maybe that's good. That, like, I do like the energy plays like a fair deck, coming from a world where like grief scamming was the big thing into Nadu comboing. At least energy, it's like it's playing creatures and it's attacking with them. And if you look at the deck list, it looks like a very fair aggro-y deck of Magic cards. So yeah, I guess if you got to have a best deck, maybe energy is not the worst best deck to have in a format like Modern.
Again, right? Like, just like we talked about like a week ago, like when a good format having like a mid-range or a fair deck at the top, that's usually a good sign.
Yeah. The other format is Legacy. We won't go in depth in Legacy because we don't really play Legacy very much, but I will say, just based on what everyone is saying about Legacy, the people I know who play a lot of Legacy, that it's kind of in a almost like historically broken place right now because of the grief decks. The grief decks in Legacy are on a whole nother level than they were in Modern, even because you have all the Force of Wills and Reanimates and Entombs, so they're so much more consistent. So I think the Legacy community is convinced that grief's going to get banned, and a lot of people think that Psychic Frog, which has actually been a pretty fun card, I think, in like Timeless and Modern, might actually just be too good in Legacy because of just like the dazes and Force of Wills and like how the format works. So I've seen some people saying that they think Psychic Frog might actually have to be banned as well. But I think at this point, Grief is pretty much a given to be banned in Legacy.
But how could they ban such a little guy?
It's
Psychic Frog is so cute.
It's such a cute little card. It is.
Yeah.
It is funny to play against. I almost don't mind losing to it, but it is funny. Have you ever had the games where like your opponent plays Psychic Frog and they just like, you try to bolt it or something and they just go all in and just like discard their hand and just like YOLO the frog?
And then lose.
Well, sometimes it works, but then sometimes.
So, yeah, I guess,
sometimes
yeah,
you
that's
lose.
fair.
So anyway, that's the ban list update. That's coming on Monday. Let us know what you think. What changes do you want to see? Do we miss anything? Anything else that should be banned in any of these formats? I don't know about Vintage. I don't think anything needs to be restricted, but I haven't played Vintage in a minute. So if you have any thoughts on this, let us know in the comments. We're going to jump into another topic, but first, a quick word from today's sponsor. One thing we've talked a lot about lately is power creep. Just look at the impact of Modern Horizons 3 in Modern. Magic cards keep getting stronger, and your e-commerce business should too. I love playing Magic and building decks, and ShipStation helps give me the time to get in as many games as possible. Here at MTG Goldfish, we use ShipStation to send playmats to members of the Goldfish crew design with a single click of the button, helping us get into that next match faster than ever. But ShipStation is even better than that, because it also saves us money, with discounts of up to 89% off UPS and USPS shipping rates. ShipStation's the fastest, most affordable way to ship to your customers, and it easily integrates into whatever services and selling channels you already use. So whether you're selling Magic cards on eBay, shipping from your LGS, or sending merch around the world, ShipStation makes it a breeze. Over 130,000 companies have grown their e-commerce business with ShipStation, including us here at MTG Goldfish. Lead your e-commerce business into the future with the shipping software that delivers. Switch to ShipStation today. Go to ShipStation.com and use the code GOLDFISH to get your 60-day free trial. That's ShipStation.com, code GOLDFISH. So, Crim, we were just talking about Modern, and I got a question for you. So I've been working on a video that involves some Modern from a while ago, and part of this has been watching some old Modern Pro Tours, and it got me thinking of how awesome Modern used to be when Modern was at its peak, and it got me feeling very nostalgic about some old Modern decks. And I was wondering, do you have a favorite Modern deck from like Modern's, not right now, but like from the history of Modern? Is there a deck that like from when you used to play all the time stands out as just like your favorite Modern deck?
When Khans of Tarkir came out, Tasigur, Gurmag Angler, that era, Grixis Control, Grixis Midrange, and believe it or not, I was a brave soul, and I even top aided, what is it, a RPTQ, PPTQ back then, playing that with Cruel Ultimatum in the deck. Like that's right. Your boy is casting 7 hard casting. You're not cheating that sucker.
No.
Like that is an actual hard casted 7 blue, black, red card, right? Like I think that was one of the formats I look upon fondly. It was such a fun time. Everything felt like the world was just wide open. And if it wasn't that, I mean, even if Deathrite was there to kind of be a menace and Lily was absurd, I still like the eras of Jeskai Control, playing with Electrolyze, pinging 2 things, drawing Lightning Helix's bolts, just playing the Jeskai Control win, where you essentially kind of are a burn deck. And then if not that, a more recent one would be when Bitter Blossom got unbanned, and I got to watch the Fairy Lord himself, Yuta Takahashi, win with the, Jace the Mind Sculptors, Lilies, and Bitter Blossoms.
Wait, did Bitter Blossom actually win after it got unbanned? Was there a time when Bitter Blossom was actually good?
Is it Bitter Blossom or is it Yuta Takahashi? I'm not really sure. I can't speak ill of Bitter Blossom. It is just not in my genome. But I can say that it's probably Yuta Takahashi that won that. But that deck was just a work of art, just being able to play Spellstutter Sprite, Inquisitions, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Jace locking people out again, and of course Liliana juicing them of cards. It was a beautiful synergy of, I think, 2 of Magic's relics of of Magic's power levels, right? Like Liliana, Jace the Mind Sculptor. These are the two big ones when you think Planeswalkers, or
That
used to be.
Yeah, that is very true. How times have changed. I miss that. I think they call it American Control at the time, the Jeskai control deck with like Electrolyze. Remember when Electrolyze was like a card you could play in your main deck, and you're like
Yeah,
3
and it
mana,
wasn't
2
a meme.
damage, draw a card, and then you like Sphinx's Rev and Lightning Helix. Oh man, I used to love that deck. For me, I think one of the coolest modern decks that I actually kind of forgot about to now is I think a Shuda deck, Eternal Command. Do you remember it was like this Ether Vial deck where you were putting Eternal Witnesses and Snapcasters into play to keep looping your cryptic commands from the graveyard, and you had like Tarmogoyf to beat down with. Oh my goodness, that deck was so cool. There was even a time when Siege Rhino was real, like literally like at the end of range, where like right after Siege Rhino came out, like tier 1 modern deck of like Lingering Souls into Siege Rhino was just like
Grim Flayer was in that deck.
It was
Grim Flayer was in that deck.
You could play Kitchen Finks to slow down the burn decks, and like Shambling Vent.
Murderous Red Cap.
Murderous Red Cap. Oh yeah, oh man, Old Modern was so incredibly cool, and I've been feeling nostalgic for it. I don't know. Do you think it's kind of funny to think that new players today are probably going to be nostalgic about like Ragavan or something 10 years from now? They're going to be sitting around doing a podcast thinking, man, remember the good old days when we got to play Ragavan, when we used to Nadu each other. It was so sweet. I miss that Nadu deck. I miss that Nadu deck.
Said no one. Oh my God. I also find it funny that like Ragavan, if it were like, made currently, it might have more toughness.
It probably would have. It would be a 2/2 probably. It'd be a Goblin Guy stats.
Just a straight up 3/2 or something. Because like it's funny that Ragavan is just, oh, it's okay. And remember, at one point, everyone was like, this is it. This is the sky falling. This card is absurd.
It was pretty absurd. And then Bowmasters.
Yeah.
And then Bowmasters came around. Well, let's move on. Let's move on from Modern into the world of some spoiler action. So we're not officially in spoiler season. Bloomborough spoilers are coming, I believe, in about a week. I believe they start like the 30th or something.
Bloomborough?
Not Bloomborough. Duskmorn. I'm stuck in the past. Duskmorn spoilers start, I believe, the 30th. So we got like just over a week until spoiler season starts. But we have some early Foundation spoilers this week. They showed off a couple of Jumpstart packs with Foundation cards. Foundations is the set coming in November that's like the core set that never rotates. And overall, we didn't see anything too crazy, but there was a couple of cards that caught my eye that I wanted to bring up. And I think one of the most interesting parts of this set is these cards just don't rotate. They don't want to say never. That's their hope, is that they never rotate. They're saying at least until 2029. But these are cards that are just going to form the foundation of Standard for at least the next 5 years. So one of those cards is Helpful Hunter, which is just a 2-mana 1/1 cat that when it enters, you get to draw a card. Basically, Spirited Companion, which saw a ton of play during its life in Standard. The other one that's even more exciting is Vengeful Blood Witch. So a 2-mana 1/1 says whenever this creature or another creature you control dies, target opponent loses a life, you gain a life. It's a vampire warlock, so essentially a blood artist. It doesn't trigger on your opponent's creatures, but very close to a blood artist or mixed with a Zulaport Cutthroat maybe. And I think the intriguing part about this is I definitely remember Standard formats where like the pieces for a cool aristocrat deck or sack deck existed, but there was no blood artist for a payoff. What do you think about having this blood artist effect that's just always legal? I feel like Standard is going to be so sweet once Foundations releases. Like, it's already sweet right now, but I feel like just always having these baseline effects in the format that, like, if you want to build aristocrats, you're always going to have at least some form of blood artist. If you want to build a whatever mono white mid-range deck, you're always going to have some form of Spirited Companion. Oh, it's going to be so cool. What do you think of these spoilers, Grim, and Foundations in general?
I mean, I feel like I've been asking for that, right? I like the idea of Foundations so much. Having played, I know everyone plug your ears if you don't want to hear the H word. Having played Hearthstone and having like going competitive with Hearthstone for a while, right? When I was getting sweaty in that game, it was nice to know there was a core set of cards I could always have in every one of my decks because it was set and assigned to certain classes. Mages always had Arcane Intellect and stuff like that. And it was nice, like you had mentioned, to look into, like, when you go to deck building, you always know there's like a centerpiece that you could play that'll always be legal. Because sometimes you're worried. Like, look at it right now. You look at all the equipment decks. You're like, okay, these equipment decks kind of suck, right? But imagine, okay, I'm using this as an example. I don't want this to be true. Stoneforge Mystic was like, was always there. I know everyone's like sweating right now. Where are you going? Was he cooking or is he memeing right now? The example might be a meme, but like something that is a big engine enabler, not as offensive as Stoneforge. So maybe something else, like maybe Sigarda's Aid, right? Something like that. It's nice to know that even the most niche archetypes will still have something to play with. So I'm very interested what they consider to be safe enough to be in the format for like a comical amount of time. Land War Elves coming back, that's scary. That's genuinely scary. But it also makes sense because green has been a meme color for a while. The sweepers have gotten pretty damn good. So I guess when I think about Land War Elves, it's not like what it once was to me. It's still very powerful, but it is not going to break the format in half. So I'm just excited to see what else is in there. My question to you, Seth, is what are the odds Lightning Bolt comes back?
Oh, we were talking about this on stream, I think last week, how we got Land War Elves, which is like this iconic green card. We got Day of Judgment, which I guess it would be better if it was Wrath of God, but you can't really put it because of regeneration. But that's kind of like the iconic 4-mana white sweeper. And we're trying to figure out what other iconic cards could show up for the rest of the colors. Lightning Bolt, I am convinced if Best of One was not a thing, Lightning Bolt would be okay. I think Lightning Bolt would be very strong, but I think mono red is just, it makes people so, like, arena players get so salty about losing to mono red that I feel like just giving the mono red decks that are already so good and have like slick shots and swift spears a Lightning Bolt, I think arena players would end up rioting. I think in best of 3, I think it would be okay though. Like, I think in best of 3, if you had 3 game matches, I think it would be powerful but fine. So I'm going to say it's like 10%. I think it's low but not impossible. What do you think? You think there's a realistic chance?
I'm only thinking of it because of core sets, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But in reality, I think it's going to be something boring like Lightning Strike.
Probably. Yeah,
right.
That's the safe
Lightning
choice.
Strike is the safe choice. It's the one that, people always want, like, the additional reach, and it's there and it's appropriately costed, I guess. So it's probably that. And then like blue.
I was going to ask you about that, Crim. That's my question for you. What do you think about Mana Leak? Could Mana Leak be the iconic blue card? I don't think they can go Counterspell. I think that's too much for Wizards to actually go Counterspell. But we got No More Lies. We had Make Disappear. We've had like very powerful 2-mana counters. Is Mana Leak, you think, completely off the table still?
I don't, because I thought Mana Leak has been okay, like has been a solid choice to have in standard for quite some time now. And we've seen No More Lies, which is a beefed up Mana Leak. And even right now, it's just, I know in spoiler season, I was on the moon, over the moon even. But it's just okay. And it's because Cavern of Souls is legal, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, I don't know. I mean, it's a very good card. I think it's a staple blue card. We remember it and like as a powerful card. I'm here for it. I think Mana Leak could totally be a balanced inclusion into a majority of standards, especially when Land War Elves exists.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Because the power level of standard that they're shooting for is obviously pretty high. If you're putting 4-mana Wrath in the format forever, Land War Elves in the format forever, they're obviously not shooting for some low-powered standard. Like, this is going to be a powerful format. So I think if you're giving other colors those powerful tools, then it's fair and probably necessary for blue decks and control decks to also have equally powerful tools to be able to, like, try to keep up with them.
Watch it be Disperse.
I know, or Consider or something. I bet there's a cantrip, but what about
such a weak choice.
What about black? Black is also a tricky color. The most iconic, especially if you're sticking to like cheap spells, is Thoughtseize. I don't think they would put Thoughtseize in standard forever. What about Inquisition? Would Inquisition too good still?
No, I don't even think it'd be that. I think it's gonna be Doomblade or like something like that. I think it's gonna be like a
Mm,
go for the throat, a solid removal spell, because I think the main way I look at it is much like Lightning Bolt is just too good of a card, and it causes this salt meter to skyrocket like blood levels. It's the same when it comes to discard spells. The best we
true.
can get is probably Duress,
I
right? But
think
I
Duress is
don't.
likely. I think that's
Yeah,
the kind of card, like, that kind of always exists in Standard anyway, right? They just keep
yeah.
printing it in random supplement or random sets, so it's always there.
I don't see a Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is definitely something they're gonna, if they decide to go with it, like again in a standard, it's gonna rotate. It's gotta rotate
And
because
I think that's an interesting thing to keep in mind too, right? Like, if you put Thoughtseize in Foundations, you could never put a better discard spell into Standard, and I think they want that ability, right? They want
pray
the
that they don't.
ability. Well, yeah, I don't. Yeah, yeah. Him to Turok is back or something. I don't know. Ooh,
Yeah.
him to Turok. Boy, that would make people salty. That would be kind of fun though.
For the first week, yeah, Seth, yeah.
I mean, random works well in Arena, right? You don't have to worry about, like, in paper, random's kind of clunky, but Arena just does it for you.
Seth,
Yeah,
you know for a fact it would be miserable if you
Blood
got
Moon,
him.
and him, please.
Okay, all right, okay, sure,
Oh,
Seth. And Bolt is too strong, right? Okay,
yeah, no, I can't have that. No, I might die
yeah.
before I cast my Blood Moons and my hymns.
Yeah, no, I like that we're reasonable. I like that we're just being reasonable. Yeah, okay.
So I don't know. We'll see more from Foundations in the future. I was surprised they gave us the early spoilers because it's not until November. It's like 2 sets in the future, but it's going to be super sweet for Standard. So that's a Foundation update. Crim, arena news of the week. So I don't think we talked about this last week. Did we talk about the precons? Did that come out before? I think it came out just after.
After we recorded.
Yeah. So one thing they announced just after last week's podcast is pre-constructed decks coming to Magic Arena for the first time. So these are decks where you can go in the store and click a button and you get to buy the entire deck and have the entire deck. So there's 2 standard decks, a dinosaur deck and a toxic deck. And then there's 3 brawl decks, a Zada deck, a Ariat deck, and a Ryu deck. Before we get into the issues that have happened with this release, what do you think about the concept of selling precons on Arena?
This is huge. They have everything in front of them to actually generate a lot of goodwill with the community here. Like, because the issue with like some of the precons they've sold before is we don't know what's going to be popular. We don't know what's actually going to be strong, right? And so they could print some precon that no one will want. Like, imagine like, I don't know, just some random like janky mechanic based deck.
I mean,
But
we've seen that with challenger decks, right? Where they have to
yeah,
print them like 6 or 9 months ahead, and by the time they actually release, it's like, oh, that deck was really good,
the Pioneer
2
ones,
sets
right?
ago or whatever. Yeah, but they're
Yeah,
just
or
not as good anymore.
The Hazoret Red was like decent, right? Like that was the only one that they did that was like okay. But the other ones were just kind of irrelevant. So I think you can get around that with digital. So now, like maybe instead of like 9 months ahead, you just need 2 months. You just code in like a half solid version of whatever a popular deck looks like. And with that, you also have the time to watch the meta develop and things like that. So there's a lot you can do here. And it comes down to how much they charge. Like, do we know what the average price of, like, is there a one price or is it varying prices?
So the way the prices work on these is kind of interesting. And that's where a little bit of the controversy about these actually came up. So the way the prices work is it's based on the rarity of the deck. So for example, the toxic deck has quite a few rares in it. It's got like a pretty reasonable mana base with a bunch of dual lands. That sells for 16,165 gems. The dinosaur deck doesn't have nearly as many rares. That one's 9,190 gems. But the good news here is they take into account what cards you already have in your collection. So if you already have some of the cards in the deck, you get a discount based on the cards you already own. So when I went to buy one of the decks, it was going to be like 200 gems or something because I have pretty much all the cards in my collection already. So I was just buying whatever the couple of cards I didn't already have access to. The one bit of there are two bits of controversy that came out of this. One is they announced prices in the article that announced these precons that ended up being a lot lower than the prices that they say in game. Like in the article, it said that Dinosaurs was going to be 5,310 gems, but then in game it says 9,190 gems. Wizards addressed this and said the one in the article was a sale price or something, and the one in game is like a not on sale price. So it was a little bit confusing, but that caught a lot of people by surprise that it was just a lot more gems than the article said. The other issue we ran into is one we run into all the time is that it doesn't take into account card versions. So for example, there's Botanical Sanctum in the mana base of like the Toxic deck, but if you don't own the Outlaws of Thunder Junction Botanical Sanctum, you're still gonna have to buy that version of Botanical Sanctum with the deck. It's not gonna give you that discount. You have to own the specific version of it, which is something we've seen with card styles, and I think that's just like a flaw in the Arena system, not specific to these decks, but just like every aspect of Arena works that way, unfortunately. So I think
that's just a flaw in the wild card system.
Yeah, it's just a flaw in the wild card system, basically. So the price is, I think we figured it out. Like if you had zero cards in your collection, the dinosaur deck was going to be like $50 or something in actual money. The toxic one was going to be like $80 or $90. Think it's worth it, Crim?
No. Now that I now know the prices, I can't believe that you are going to sell me again. They have every opportunity to show Arena and grow the Arena community, get more people in. You know how many people I know are just like hard locked out of decks because they just run out of cards and they just need a good starting point? $80 is a lot for not real cards. I think that even that's like they're somehow rivaling Marvel Snap numbers. Like Marvel Snap was pretty predatory with its bundle pricing. And this, I'm just looking at it like this. These should not be more than like already $40 is like pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I think $40 solid, $50 even. Let's call it there. And the fact that these vary, that's kind of wild. I think it should just be a flat 50. You have every
50.
opportunity to grow your player base, which I know in the short, like, you know, up front, it may not read like a lot more money, but I promise you having people play your game in the long run is more money. So I can't believe this is $80 for not real cards. And the dinosaur one, okay, great. That one's what, $50 you said?
Yeah, I can look up the exact prices, but roughly it was around 50 and 80 or 90 were the two prices that I remember, yeah.
For $80, I would like not a half-built tier 1.5, tier 2 deck. For $80, I want a either half or 3/4 built tier 1 deck. I mean, am I wrong? Is that too ambitious? I mean, I don't understand.
Yeah, so I think you're not wrong. You're not wrong. There is some confusion based on what price that you go by. So with the sale price, it's a little bit better. If you go by the price that was listed in the article, which isn't the price in game, the sale price has the dinosaur deck at around $30 and the other one around $60. If you go by the price that was listed in game, it jumps up to 50 and 90 or something like that. I think with these decks in specific, you want them to be cheap, right? Because these are obviously designed to go to new players. Like, that's the upside of these decks. No established Arena player, Magic player, is going to buy that dinosaur deck because it's not really a competitive deck, right? It's not even especially close to being a competitive deck. This is something, the upside that I see is you're new to Arena, you don't have a deck, you can click a button and have this entire deck, and you can play it in unranked, you can play it in the lower ranks with a click of a button, but a newer player isn't going to spend $30, $50, $90 on a deck for when they're just learning the game. That's just way too much to ask. The new players are like mostly the free-to-play players. So I feel like, especially for these decks, having the price be cheaper is going to be really, really important. I think there is room for more expensive decks, because one thing I'd love to see, you mentioned earlier how they can do so much with this because the time frame is so much shorter than paper precons. In my dream world, I imagine they do a Pro Tour and the Pro Tour top 8 goes up and like the deck list published Sunday morning, morning, and like Sunday afternoon, you can go on Arena and like click a button and just buy one of the decks from the Pro Tour top 8 or something. Like that would be so cool. Those decks
Don't think
obviously
that's possible.
those
They
would have to be more
program that.
expensive, right?
Yeah, well, they would have to program that, right? And into the
I
game. That would take more than 24 hours.
so
Like
I don't
the pre-con.
Yeah, I don't know how hard it is. Yeah, I don't know enough about programming. I wish I did. I don't know how quickly you can program because all the cards are in the game, right? So you're just kind of like arranging them and adding prices to them. I don't know. I don't know how hard or easy it would be, but I think there's lots of potential there. But the price does have to come down. People calculated it. It is a discount. If you were just going to put together these decks with wild cards, like going to the store and buying wild cards, this is somewhat cheaper than doing it that way. The problem is
Somewhat cheaper.
you have no flexibility, right? I can't remember the exact percentage. Like it's a discount, but it's not like a huge discount. The problem is you're buying like this one set deck and you might not actually use all those cards outside of this deck. So a lot of people figured if you're just like trying to build a collection, you're still better off just buying packs or like drafting or whatever compared to buying the precons just because the price is too high. So I think it's a really good idea, but the price issues they just gotta be cheaper. I would almost rather like, I would almost rather have the decks be worse and cheaper if they had to, but they shouldn't have to, right? Because it's Arena. There's no printing costs, there's no ink, it's just all in digital. So I don't know. I remember I didn't play Hearthstone. I played Hearthstone on and off like over the last years. I didn't log into Hearthstone for like a year and I logged back in and they were like, hey, here's a standard deck. And they gave me like just a pretty legit standard deck just because I logged back in for the first time in a year. That was it. There was no money, no strings attached. Why can't we do more stuff like it? And that actually got me to play more Hearthstone because I had this deck now. I was like, I can actually like play some constructed now. I think stuff like that would make Arena so much better, right? Could you imagine if you log back in for the first time in 6 months and they just give you the toxic deck and they're like, hey, go play some standard, and knowing that it's going to get you hooked and then you're going to give them more of your money because you really love the game and want to keep playing it. I wish Wizards and Arena would do more stuff like that.
Like just business wise, that's more money in the long haul. Like there it's only an upside to grow your player base digitally, right?
Yeah.
Like there's what is the downside here? I am very curious about that because $80 is such a I know that even if it's discounted, right? We're assuming that $80 is if I own none of the cards, which is again if I were a new player, right?
Right.
And then on top of that, if it's on sale, how long is the sale window for, right? I don't want to deal with the sale window. I think just on average, you don't even need to give me a sale. Don't put it on sale.
Yeah.
Just give me a $40 and like to $50 deck. I think that is the respectable price because I'm saying this as someone who's played a lot of digital games. It killed it for me. I have a Captain America shield. I've got like all these Marvel things related. I love Marvel and oh my God. I love the IP. And Marvel Snap unfortunately killed itself so fast with predatory bundles. And your economy is already rough with wild cards. You got to do something here. You got to at least throw a bone to your player base here and potentially newer and future player base. So I just don't see the upside of just having $40 to $50 decks. And these aren't even tier 1. It's not like I'm getting a 4-color mid-range control deck, right? Maybe then I would pay $80.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And at tier you could do that, right, with digital. Tier 1 deck $75, $80. Tier 2 deck $50. Tier 3 deck $40, $30. Or give it out like for logging back in.
Yeah. There's just so much that can be done with this system. So I hope Wizards, my hope is this was the first test run and they're figuring things out. I know it's probably naive to think Wizards is going to get more generous with something on Arena because there hasn't been a huge track record of that. But that's my hope, is this is the test run. And this system, I think, could be really beneficial for players and for Wizards if they can get the pricing right and like get the decks right. So I think there's a lot of potential with precons on Arena, although these decks I just don't think really reach that potential because of the pricing issues primarily. And even like the decks, I was looking at like the amount of rares in the decks, and the toxic deck actually has almost exactly the same amount of rares as like the Gruul Slickshot Show Off deck, which is like a legit tier deck. Like why Toxic is not exactly a legit tier deck at this point. So I think they even if they wanted to go spiky and try to like here buy a tier 1 deck, I think there's ways they could have chosen different decks to make that a possibility if they wanted to. So I like that it's giving people an easy way to get into Arena. They gotta get the price down. It's digital cards, and people just
Yeah.
can't pay too much. And I hope they learn that lesson from Snap or whatever. That like you can go too far, right? Like with the pricing stuff, and eventually people are gonna get upset about it. Anyway, I think that is all of our topics for today. But one quick fish mail on the way out the door, because I don't think we've talked about this, Crib. So this comes from at 11 Vicious. Says Gavin announced that as far as he knows, Mystery Boosters 2 will only be at special events at cons. This is the first set in a while where I want to buy a case. What do you feel about the decision to only have it at events where only a fraction of the player base can enjoy? Quick shout out before we answer this. Right now, actually, it might be over by now because things sell out so quick. But today is the day that the Festival in a Box, which is the other way that you can get Mystery Boosters 2, is on sale at the Secret Lair website. So by the time this goes live, it might already be too late, depending on how quickly it sells out. But you should check that if you're trying to get cases. But Crim, what do you think about Mystery Boosters 2 being convention only, essentially, outside of this Secret Lair sale?
Obviously, this is built on the FOMO system, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised in a collectible card game. I do think that it is totally fine. It's not like an essential thing like, oh, there are going to be standard legal cards in here, right? I think it's totally fine that there is a festival exclusive thing. I just hope I can grab one at some point. But yeah, like, I don't know. I think it's okay that they have festival exclusive things.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll note that Mark Rosewater brought up is he said if it wasn't a convention only thing, the set wouldn't exist. That their like convention team or whatever wanted something specifically for conventions to get people to go to conventions. So Mystery Boosters 2 came out of their whatever convention team's budget or something, and it was like an extra thing. So according to Mark Rosewater, if it wasn't convention only, they just wouldn't have made the set at all. So I think it's fine. I think it's fine that there's special things at conventions. I know it's a feel bad. My initial instinct was, I really hope they sell it in game stores. And honestly, I still hope that they do. I think this happened last time, right? Where convention boosters were a convention exclusive. And then like a year later, they were like, you know what? We'll put a retail edition too. So maybe there's some chance they show up in local game stores eventually. And that would be cool to give everyone access to them. But much like some of the special promos and special pins, I think it's okay that there's actually something special for going to cons, because cons, they cost a lot of money, and it's nice, I guess, that you're getting something different out of them, something that you can't just do at your local game store on a Friday night. There's this reason you can go into this mystery booster draft that's unique, and it's going to be really fun. So I see why they're doing it. I hope it ends up in local game stores eventually, but this isn't some hill I'm going to die on at this point. Like, if it never shows up in local game stores, I think it's also fine. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of episode 498 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. Crim, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have an amazing week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.